What's up, guys? This is Kephas, and we are back in the Legion beta. Well, technically we are in the PTR for the pre-patch, but it's still Legion. I just found that it's a lot easier to test characters out and macros here. I can do it a lot faster because I'm right with the target dummy, and I've got the new spells and everything ready to go. So that's what we're going to do now. Now, I don't have the artifact weapons, but it's okay, because I figured what I would do is, from here on out, because this patch is imminent, why not focus on what is imminent and what you're going to be dealing with first, and then down the road, when we start getting into Legion, sinking our teeth in, we'll go over artifact weapons and how they affect our classes, and how I will adjust the macros then. So, let's get into this. I'm doing the Mage today, and before I actually get into it, I actually just thought of this. I know that you guys follow my guides, you love my macros, and I know that you're worried because when Legion comes, obviously everything's going to change. You're going to need a new mod, you're going to need new macros. So what I'm going to do is, in a future video, I'm going to release like a guide on the new gnome sequencer, and I'll put in a link to my macros that I'm using, and I'll give you some other guides on where you can find other macros, because there are going to be some classes that I haven't gotten to yet. It's going to take a lot of time, but I'm going to try to get some starting macros out for as many classes as I can, as many specs as I can, as soon as possible, and guides will come later through the expansion as I get a chance to really sink my teeth into those specs, those classes, just like I did before. Hopefully I'll do a little bit better about getting those out, but at the same time you have to remember that there are like all these new systems, these new artifact weapons that you got to level up. It's going to take a long time, so bear with me. I'm only one person, but I'll try to get things out for you faster, at least give you some macros, so that way you have something to mess with, or at least give you some resources so that you can find macros on your own. So, but for now, let's look at the Frost Mage. The Frost Mage is a lot of fun. Actually, all Mage specs, in my opinion, in Legion are awesome. I love Fire, and I always love Frost. So today, we're going to take a look at the Frost Mage and see what it has to offer. We are here. We are level 100. We're at the Garrison, unfortunately. Ugh. A little bit more time is going to be spent here at the Garrison, but it's a good place to test out our spec. We have item level 688. We do have a DPS meter. Now, I don't know what good DPS is and what good DPS isn't in Legion. It's going to be a little bit less than like what it was, you know, like I guess normal. I don't know how it works, but anyways, it's there, and I'll be able to like test out the different characters together and see what's good and what's not, you know, based on the average of what I have. But anyways, as you can see, these are all the abilities that I have. Of course, ability number 1 is a macro, no sequencer macro, which puts a couple abilities together, and we'll go over those now. So let's open up this sheet here, and I'll show you what we got. So we've got standard stuff. We still got Blink. We still got Blizzard, which is your AoE ability. You've got Cone of Cold, which really isn't a rotational ability, but it's what you'll use for CC. But it does do a little bit of damage. Just does a lot of slow. Conjure Refreshments is just like one ability now. Really cool, really straightforward. Counterspell still in the game. Interrupts, spells. Frost Nova still in. Good stuff. Frostbolt's your main attack. This is what you use when you have nothing else to hit. And it also will do some other things as you use it. So, you've got Frostbolt. You've got Frozen Orb. Kind of works like it did before. It's a minute cooldown, but it has there's a cool passive that works with this ability. It's really cool. We'll get over that in a minute. A minute cooldown, it will give you Fingers of Frost proc, which is what you're going to use Ice Lance on, so when you have Fingers of Frost, you'll use Ice Lance. So that's how that works. Then you've got Glacial Spike at the talent. We'll go over that in a little bit. For Ice Barrier, still in the game for Ice Mages. For Frost Mages, Ice Block, still there. Good stuff. Icy Veins is your cooldown. You'll use this to accelerate it gives you a bunch of haste for 20 seconds and preventing damage from delaying your spell casting. Awesome, awesome ability. Good for some burst. And there are some talents that will lower the cooldown of this, so it's kind of fun. Invisibility, still got that. Polymorph, still got it. And of course, on all versions. Portal and Teleport, yes. Slow Fall, yes. Spell, and that's actually everything. So you still got Time Warp. You still have Time Warp, don't worry. It hasn't gone away. So let's get into the passives now. Brain Freeze has changed because you don't have Frostfire Bolt anymore. Before, you would use Ice Lance on Fingers of Frost, and you would use Frost Firebolt on Brain Freeze. But now, Brain Freeze has Frostbolt has a 10% chance to reset the remaining cooldown on Frozen Orb. So even though Frozen Orb has a minute cooldown, you might cast it, and you actually probably will cast it more often than you'd think because of how Brain Freeze works now. So when you get Brain Freeze, that resets the cooldown of Frozen Orb. So your Frostbolt has a 10% chance to cause Brain Freeze, which resets the remaining cooldown of your Frozen Orb. Pretty cool. Fingers of Frost, you get 2 charges of it, and it's just, you know, you use Ice Lance on it. Good stuff. Frostbolt, I'll just read it. Frostbolt has a 15% chance, and Blizzard and Frozen Orb damage has 5% chance to grant a charge of Fingers of Frost. Fingers of Frost charges cause your next Ice Lance to deal 140% increased damage and deal damage as if the target were frozen for a total increase of a lot. Freaking 380% damage. So you do not want to hit Ice Lance unless you have Fingers of Frost. Simple as that. So your goal here is to generate Fingers of Frost. And then there's Frost Armor. Increases haste by 8% and causes enemies who strike you to be frozen for a little bit. Yes, good stuff. Passive talent, we'll go over that. Mastery. Your mastery, when you deal damage, Frostbolt, you have 30, well, in my case, because I have whatever mastery I have, 37.7% of the damage done is stored as an icicle for 1 minute. Also increases the damage done by your water elemental by 37.7%. Casting Ice Lance causes any icicles stored to begin launching at the target. Up to 5 icicles can be stored. Excess icicles will automatically be launched. So there you go. You still have the icicles thing going on just like you did before. That's what mastery has to do with. And then there's Shatter. Multiplies the critical strike chance of your spells against frozen targets. So whenever targets are frozen, you do more crit to them, have a higher chance of crit, I should say. And that's basically the Frost Mage. So it's really cool stuff. A lot of it's proc based. Now this is how it's going to work. The Gnome Sequencer macro basically just combines Frostbolt, Frozen Orb, and Frostbolt, Frozen Orb. Actually, I believe that's it. So yeah, it basically all your abilities that you need to cast. Oh, and a couple talents. That's what it is. So all the abilities that you need to cast, and then you'll do Ice Lance by itself because you don't want to use Ice Lance unless Fingers of Frost proc. And so you don't want to like cast that all the time. If I put in the macro, then you will cast it when you don't want to, and that's not going to be good for your Frost Mage. So anyways, this is how it works. You're just going to spam one like crazy. As you can see, Frozen Orb, and I'm using Frostbolt. Now I got Fingers of Frost proccing, and I'm using my Ice Lance to consume those. We have Fingers of Frost again. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. Now, you'll see the icicles building up, and you're going to see something really cool here. Now look. Now that's happening. Now that is not something that you read about just now. That is actually a talent, and it's really sweet. It's in the macro. It's called Glacial Spike, and we will go over that here momentarily. I'm kind of hoping for a Brain Freeze proc, but as you can see, it's a very straightforward rotation. Even if you don't use the Glacial Spike ability, basically all you're going to do is you're going to cast Frostbolt, you're going to cast Frozen Orb when it's off cooldown, so when Brain Freeze happens or when the minute passes, and then you're just going to hit Ice Lance whenever Fingers of Frost proc. It's as simple as that. It's a lot easier than it was even before. Now, of course, there are some talents that'll change it, and then, of course, if you're doing AOE, you'll just cast Blizzard, which actually is really cool now. So it's a cast time, and then it's got a cooldown, and you don't like channel it anymore. I don't know if I feel like you channeled it before, but now you just like look. See, it's a cast, and then it goes off. You let it do its thing, and then you do other stuff. So you go back to your single target rotation. That's actually really cool. I just found that out. Pretty sweet. So it's actually pretty viable. Anyways, let's get into the talents now. So we're doing a Frost Mage, of course. And here's what I'm using, and we'll go over them all. Ray of Frost is actually a really cool ability. Talents can only be changed while in a rested XP area. Am I not in a rested XP area? No, that's dumb. Let's go into the rested XP area. I actually want to show this one off because I think it's pretty freaking sweet. So here we are in a rested XP area. I'm still not in a rested XP area. Seriously, game. Seriously? Are you serious right now? Am I in combat? Am I still in combat? I'm probably still in combat. That's probably what it is. Am I still in combat? Okay, there we go. Now we got it. I was in a rested XP area. I was just in combat. So Ray of Frost. Anyways, what it does, it's like the Ray of Frost ability for Diablo 3 with the wizard with Mei Ling. Or Li Ming, not Mei Ling. Mei Ling is someone else. Anyways, so what Mei Ling is from Metal Gear Solid. Jeesh.
In China, they say, rashness brings success to few, misfortune to many.
So Ray of Frost, for the next 10 seconds, you can channel a beam of icy power at an enemy, and slowing movement speed and dealing 8,600 frost damage every 0.8 seconds. Each Ray of Frost deals damage damage increases by 20%. Oh, that was messed up. But anyways, it looks like this. It's basically Kamehameha, just like Mei Ling casts. It's really cool. You cast it. It's got a little bit of a cooldown. I think it's like 30 seconds. No, it's a minute. Holy crap. But it does a lot of like bursty damage. But obviously, it's a new ability that you have to worry about. And it doesn't really work very well with the macro because it's a channeled ability. So obviously, that's something to think about. What I like to use is Lonely Winter, which replaces your summoned water elemental. Now, this is why I like it. This is basically like Lone Wolf for Frost Mages. And what it does is it removes your Water Elemental from play and generates more damage from Ice Lance, Frozen Orb. Wait, let's see. From Frostbolt, Ice Lance, and Frozen Orb, increases their damage by 20%. So, it removes Water Elemental and increases all of your abilities' damages. Wow. My words. Anyways, you get what I'm going for here. You get what I'm trying to say. So, that's basically like, you don't have to worry about Water Elemental anymore. It doesn't add any new abilities to your rotation. It buffs all your spells. Pretty easy, straightforward. I like it a lot. And that's what I went with. And then, of course, you can always go for this one, too. Bone Chilling. Whenever you're attempting to chill a target, you gain Bone Chilling, increasing all frost damage you deal by 0.5% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 12 times. So, obviously, that can get pretty intense. And it's a slow buff. And it will continuously generate more damage. Kind of like how this does, but in just a different way, and for a longer period of time, I guess. But I like this one because I don't like a Water Elemental. This makes it easy to not worry about it. These are all survivability. They do different things. This one's for movement speed. This is survivability. This is another survivability. Basically, it gives you 2 charges of Ice Block. Go with whichever one you want. I like this one the most. It's pretty cool. This one's not bad either. Neither is this one. It just depends on what you're doing. Next up is... now this one's interesting. These are cooldowns. Mirror Image puts 2 copies of yourself. It's like the multi-form technique, basically. And then obviously they cast spells for you. Last for 40 seconds. 2-minute cooldowns. A pretty long buff. Kind of nice. Of course, then there's the dreaded Rune of Power, which some people love. Don't worry, it's not going anywhere. 45% or 45-second recharge. Cooldown, I guess, places a Rune of Power on the ground for 10 seconds, which increases your spell damage by 50% while standing within 8 yards. So, put this on the ground, stand near it, you'll do a bunch more damage for 10 seconds, 45-second cooldown, so you obviously, you have to worry about positioning, you have to kind of stand still, so that's something to think about, but people love it. It is a pretty substantial increase in damage. What I go with is Incanter's Flow. Magical energy flows through you while in combat, building up to 20% increased damage, and then diminishing down to 4% increased damage, cycling every 10 seconds. So it's like every 10 seconds you go through the cycle from 4% increased damage to 10% to 20% increased damage, which is a lot of increased damage. But obviously it's really fast, so it's kind of random, you know. And if you're really good, I guess you could time it to when it's like at its peak and hit your really strong abilities like Ice Lance or I don't know, whatever. But you know, it's always going to give you some increased damage. It's not steady. It's going to fluctuate within 10 seconds, but it's something and it's passive. You don't have to worry about it. That's what I went with. Next up is, of course, Ice Nova. This is all like CC stuff, so we're not really going to worry about it too much. Frozen Touch again. Basically, it's just generates 2 charges of Fingers of Frost. Oh, okay, so let's go over this, actually. I take that back. This is not CC. My bad. So, Ice Nova. It's an ability that you cast, 25-second cooldown, causes a whirl of icy wind around this target enemy or ally, dealing 16,000 frost damage to all enemies within 8 yards and freezing them in place for 2 seconds. A primary enemy target will take 100% increased damage. So, this is a pretty substantial ability. It does some pretty significant AoE damage, and it will increase the damage taken by the target that you put it on, obviously unless it's an ally. So that's actually pretty nice. I could easily put that in the macro if I wanted to, but if you don't have a macro, this is another ability that you have to worry about that you'll have to cast every 25 seconds, so that's something to think about. Of course, then there's Frozen Touch, which is a 30-second cooldown, immediately generates 2 charges of Fingers of Frost. Pretty straightforward. You get the 2 free charges of Fingers of Frost every 30 seconds. Not bad. Of course, again, it's an ability that you need to worry about. Lastly, and this is what I went with, is Splitting Ice. Your Ice Lance and Icicles now deal 10% increased damage and hit a second nearby target for 50% of their damage. Pretty freaking cool. And you'll see why I like this one when we get to Glacial Spike. Anyways, next up, we've got Ice Flows. Makes your next Mage spell with cast time shorter than 10 seconds, castable while moving, unaffected by the global cooldown, and castable while casting max 3 charges. So you get 3 charges of this. It's a 20-second cooldown. It basically means that you can cast while moving for 10 seconds. This is probably, if you're raiding, this might be the one that you want to take. This is a pretty substantial movement ability, allowing you to cast while moving. Very important in a lot of raiding situations, so you might want to take this one. Of course, you could always go for Ring of Frost, which is summons a Ring of Frost for 10 seconds at the target's location. Enemies entering the ring are incapacitated for 10 seconds. Limit 10 targets. So it's a 45-second cooldown. It's a pretty substantial CC ability. And then, of course, you can take Ice Ward. Frost Nova now has 2 charges. So you either go for CC or movement, movement ability. What do you call it? I want to say momentum, but that's not right. But you get what I'm saying. This is probably the most substantial one that you'll take, but it depends on the situation and what you're doing. That's kind of the point of these talents. So whatever one you want to go with, I went with this one just because it's passive, and I do a lot of solo content on this character, so having 2 charges of Frost Nova was pretty nice for survivability. And next up, we've got Frost Bomb. Now, this is an ability that I cannot macro, no matter what, and I'll explain why. So what it does is places a Frost Bomb on the target for 12 seconds. Limit 1 target. Your Ice Lance that benefits from Shatter will trigger the release of a wave of freezing ice, dealing 9,622 frost damage on the target and 6,000 frost damage on all other enemies within 10 yards. Now, this is a really cool ability. It does some pretty significant single target and some pretty significant AoE damage. But I can't macro it because it's a debuff and it doesn't have a cooldown, which means that if I put this in the macro, you're going to cast it over and over and over again, and that is not how you want to do it. You want to put it up there until it goes away, and then you want to put it up there again. So that's why this class, and that's why classes like Druids and Rogues and Warlocks are almost impossible to macro, and Priests to some extent. They're almost impossible to macro, and that's why you're not seeing video guides for those classes, because they're very, very hard and pretty much impossible to macro. So similar to this, if you use this ability and you're relying on macros, you're going to have to cast this one by yourself, and obviously that's not what I like, but it's kind of cool. You just have to babysit the debuff. Then there's what I went with, which is Unstable Magic. It's a passive. Frostbolt has 20% chance to explode on impact, dealing 50% increased damage to the target and all other enemies within 8 yards. So it does pretty substantial single target and AoE damage. Maybe not as much as like this one, and probably not as much as this one, which is Arctic Gale. Increases Blizzard's damage by 30% and its area of effect by 20%. Pretty good AoE. So I went with this one because it was good single target and AoE. It's a passive, and it's going to help me out in pretty much any situation. Kind of nice. Lastly, we've got Thermal Void. Casting Ice Lance extends your Icy Veins by 2 seconds. Kind of nice. You're going to cast a lot of Ice Lances, and if you can extend Icy Veins, it's pretty good. But, if you're not using Icy Veins, obviously this is pretty much useless, so it's up to you if you want to use it. Of course, I went with Glacial Spike. Now, this is an ability that you have to worry about, but it's really cool how it works. Rather than having your little icicles just kind of go at the target whenever you have a bunch, or whenever you use Ice Lance, this conjures a massive spike of ice and merges your current icicles into it. It impales your target, dealing 41,000 damage, plus the damage stored in your icicles, and freezes the target in place for 4 seconds. Damage may interrupt the freeze effect. Requires 5 icicles to cast. Ice Lance no longer launches icicles. So basically, when you have 5 icicles, you can use Glacial Spike. It does massive damage, does the base damage plus damage that you've stored up in your icicles, which is increased by your mastery. So this is a really, really cool ability. So I went with that one because even if you don't have a macro, all you have to do is pay attention. When you have 5 icicles floating over your head, you'll know to hit the Glacial Spike button. So it's kind of like how when you have Fingers of Frost, you know to hit Ice Lance. It's kind of like a proc, and it's pretty easy to keep track of your character and know when to hit it. So it's really easy to do. Lastly, and of course I can always macro it too, so that helps too. Lastly is Comet Storm. This is another one that I can macro because it has a cooldown. Calls down a series of 7 icy comets around the target, each which deals 6,400 frost damage to all enemies within 4 yards of its impact. So it's a pretty decent single target AoE attack. It's been around forever, but I love the Glacial Spike ability, and that is how I have my character set up. I think it's really easy to play. You don't have to worry about much. Like I said, all you do is just use Frozen Orb when you have it off cooldown, and then you do Ice Lance whenever you have Fingers of Frost, and then otherwise all you're going to do is cast Frostbolt, and then when you get 5 charges of the icicles, or 5 icicles over your head, you'll hit the Glacial Spike button. Now, I have these abilities macroed, so it's pretty straightforward, but that's basically what you want to do. You want to make sure that you don't have, when you have 2 Fingers of Frost that you get rid of at least one of those because you don't want to waste any charges of Fingers of Frost. Like right now, I want to be casting Ice Lance. There we go. So as you can see, you guys, it's really straightforward because you don't have to worry about like different procs anymore, because when Brain Freeze procs, all that's going to do is reset your Frozen Orb cooldown. That's all that you have to manage. It's really, really straightforward. And if you take the Lonely Winter talent, then you don't even have to manage a pet anymore. Otherwise, you're still going to have to manage your Water Elemental, but I found this to be the easiest way to play a Frost Mage, and so far, it's the easiest, like, Frost, or Mage spec, most accessible, easy, because all the procs are queued on the screen. You don't have to worry about looking at your UI. You don't have to keep track of really that many cooldowns, so it's really straightforward how you play this class, really easy, and it's going to make it easier for you to focus on the actual fight if you want to play a ranged class, similar to how the Beastmaster Hunter is, and I just thought it was really cool. So I wanted to show you guys the Frost Mage. I hope you guys liked this video. I hope that it was informative. Thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful day. This is Kephas. Until next time.